From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and All India Radio, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in London, where we've had fireworks going off for both Diwali and Bonfire Night here. But cricket is facing its own explosive situation surrounding Yorkshire County Cricket Club and an investigation into racism at the club, which at the heart of it has issues of governance, of process, of transparency, education. It is a sorry mess, and it is not going away anytime soon.
Hi, it's Stu Maxwell for the ABC in Sydney. England's about to arrive in Australia, and Joe Root's talking about the gabatoire's no longer death sentence for English teams. We will see what happens. But we're watching this other show at the moment in the Middle East, and who knows? Australia might even get to the final. Maybe they'll be playing England, Ali.
They could be.
Very possible, yeah. Hello, everybody. Happy Diwali. I'm Charu Sharma for All India Radio in Bangalore. These are very strange days. On one hand, of course, the festive season's peaking with Diwali, lots of festivities, celebration, happiness, joy. And on the other hand, extreme lament and despair at the goings-on with the Indian cricket team in the UAE. A lot of people keep asking, so Charu, what are our chances still? And I have a favorite answer now, which I'm going to leave for a little later.
All right, we will come to it. We'll tease it out of you. Let's chat about the men's T20 World Cup because, yeah, it's thrown up some really interesting stories, hasn't it, over the last week? And Pakistan becoming the first side to qualify for the semi-finals. Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and Scotland, meanwhile, have all gone out. And Pakistan have been really impressive. We'll come to them in a moment. But Charu, I do want to talk about India because it's been an up and down tournament so far, thrashed by both Pakistan and New Zealand. I mean, struggling to take any wickets to speak of. But then they go and score the highest total of the tournament so far against Afghanistan with 210. I mean, did that match against Afghanistan alleviate some of the criticism in any way, or is this just papering over the cracks? Because, let's face it, India will always be expected to beat Afghanistan.
Yes, they were always expected to beat them, but it's like applying just a little bit of salve on a very deep cut. It's really all over for India. The first two matches were horrendous, and the kind of margins we lost those matches, unimaginable. People say, well, does India still have a chance? And I say, my standard answer these days, new answer is, Alison, and I ask you this, what is the closest figure to zero that you can think of?
0.1111.
Yeah, and gets people thinking, and I say, that is the figure that in terms of chances for India to make it through to the top two in their group. It's really, it's very difficult right now. Too little, too late against Afghanistan. So it's really just a very poor start for India, and the whole country is bubbling with conjecture and rumor about why has this fabulous team crashed. All of us thought that they were joint leading contenders with England, but no more.
Jim, we heard before that Afghanistan match, Jasprit Bumrah, the Indian bowler, started talking about bubble fatigue. Is that an excuse or a genuine reason? I mean, they're not the only ones, surely.
Come and live in Sydney or Melbourne for a couple of months. You'll get bubble fatigue pretty quickly. Yeah, it sounds a bit hollow to me if that's a genuine excuse. They've just been a bit flat in those two games. If you're batting first and you lose a couple of wickets, and England have done that pretty well against every team that they've played pretty much, and then the game's momentum just swings your way. I think India can still prosper if they manage to get to the semi-final, but that's the problem now. And they just looked a bit flat to me. They lacked a bit of energy. Probably a good thing that they're going to change the captain, Charu.
There's a lot of talk about that too, because, the world loves controversy rather than just performance, the news world at any rate. But people are now saying that the cricket board got rid of Kohli because of his performances or his lack of performances or whatever. But to the best of my knowledge, it was Kohli who decided that, listen, I don't want this additional responsibility. I've played enough as a captain. I've got perhaps different priorities, a wife and child and everything else. And, I'm just really tired of this whole T20 captaincy business. So it's a good time to move away as a sort of an installment plan to maybe move away from captaincy in the other forms as well as he goes along. And I can't see anybody in the board or in world cricket telling Kohli what to do.
How much then of a rebuilding job, also re-energising job, is Rahul Dravid going to have to do as the new coach? Because since we last spoke, it has now been confirmed that Rahul Dravid will take over from Ravi Shastri at the end of the T20 World Cup. So what is the task ahead of him as the new coach?
Well, is it a good time to quote Ian Chappell on the importance of a coach? he does bring something new to the table, doesn't he? Just because of the kind of person he is. And of course, he's played just as much cricket as a lot of other very celebrated coaches or cricketers. So in a sense, he's lucky that the UAE debacle is not really his problem. It's soon going to be over. And he'll begin afresh with New Zealand touring India, which could be a tougher tour for New Zealand. What does he really do with the personnel he has? I don't think there's going to be a major change of personnel. He has what Ravi Shastri has in terms of personnel. And even more important for me personally, I'm a little old-fashioned, is can he affect the culture of the Indian cricket team? Can he make them a little more humble? Can he get them all together and say, listen, forget the superstardom. Let's just go out there and kind of do what we really set out to do as professionals.
Jim, been looking forward to us having a little chat about the England-Australia encounter at the T20 World Cup. England have been pretty flawless so far in their start to the competition, haven't they? 4 out of 4. But Jos Buttler has been absolute standout in the games against Sri Lanka, where he got 100, as well as against Australia. And when England beat the Aussies by 8 wickets with 50 balls to spare last Saturday, I mean, what was the response to that in Australia, Jim? England just simply being too strong? They got butlered.
Well, it happened in the middle of the night. I don't think anyone saw it. So it didn't really happen. Fake news. So we woke up and heard the score. We thought, oh, God. No, we've lost another T20 game. We don't care, really. We're only interested in the Ashes as we flounder in this tournament. So England are playing with a lot of confidence. They're superbly led by Ian Morgan and Butler playing superbly. But look, one game can turn all that around, as we know. Once you get to the semi-finals, you can have a good or bad day out, and that's it. So England look really, really strong. But that's not to say that should they meet New Zealand or India in the semi-final, it might go wrong. Should they happen to play Australia, Pakistan, anyone in the final? That's the nature of things. Yes, I really don't think there's a lot of angst in Australia about what's happening with the T20. But really, it's the Ashes that matter.
Nicely deflected away there, Jim. But no, I'll take your point. And when the Aussies aren't winning, the Australian public love a winning team, don't they? So when the Aussies aren't winning, they take very little interest in it. But I mean, Jos Buttler has been incredible. And the unbeaten 100 against Sri Lanka, 101 not out, and getting that 100 with a 6 off the last ball as well. He's now become the first England men's player to score 100 in every format of the game. Heather Knight has done it as an England women's player. He is just outstanding. And I mean, it'll be a question as to whether he can translate that into test match cricket.
Batting is a terminal experience in cricket. Bowlers get a second and third chance, even though quite a few of them are going for sixes. But look, at the moment, England playing superbly, and Morgan's the best captain of all these teams. So I think if you want to run a book on it, they're the favourites, no doubt about that.
And what of Pakistan then? Because they became the first side into the semi-finals. They had that 45-run win over Namibia, one of the nations who has absolutely benefited from the exposure in this T20 World Cup. But yeah, like England, Pakistan have won 4 out of 4. I mean, how good is it to see them doing this well?
Brilliant. Because nobody really gave them a chance, did they, at the start of the tournament? They've come out, literally from the cold. They're showing no weakness. Terrific bowling, great spin, wonderful batting right at the top as well. Those two starting out really well. And I think this is the most consistent that Pakistan has ever played a major T20 or a world tournament. So it's been flawless. And I do credit, you were talking about Eoin Morgan, I do credit Babar Azam with keeping cool. Because, I mean, Pakistan we've talked about terms like mercurial, they can fly off the handle pretty quickly. But I think Babar Azam has been a very calming influence on his team. And of course, he's leading from the front, so you can't argue.
It would feel like quite a sweet outcome in terms of the tumultuous build-up Pakistan have had with the teams who pulled out of tours, the disruption they had behind the scenes, if Pakistan were able to come through this. But yeah, there are semi-finals to come. Before you even get to the final, it is T20, it is knockout. But again, we said what's made this such a sort of wholesome tournament is the performances and the the presence of teams like Afghanistan, of course, Scotland, Namibia, who have all helped to light up the world. And it was a beautiful moment. I don't know whether you saw the footage of the Pakistan team going into the Namibia dressing room after their match. And again, sharing of information, cricket coming together. And the nebulous term, the spirit of cricket, but it was absolutely great to see those teams mixing it up together and sharing their love of the game.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
We're now to Australia and the Women's Big Bash League, which has reached the halfway point, and we've already witnessed a super over and the second highest partnership ever in the competition. Now, viewing figures were also up at the start of the tournament. There was a 58% increase in television audience across the first 5 games compared to last year. Now, earlier this week, I spoke to the general manager of the Big Bash League, Alistair Dobson, just to assess how this year's competition is going.
Oh, it's been a phenomenal start. I think, part of the challenge or even just getting the competition started this year has been, a challenge again, but with unbelievable support from, in this instance, the Tasmanian government in Tassie, but also the commitment of the players and our clubs to get the competition started again and played. And, the results are showing in terms of the quality of the cricket and our audiences and all the things we measure ourselves on.
Yeah, you mentioned the audiences, and viewing figures have been up since the start of the tournament. I saw a 58% increase noted for television audience across the first 5 games compared to last year even. What's your take on why we're seeing this particular increase?
There's a couple of reasons, and you couldn't go past simply the quality of the cricket. I mean, it continues to improve every year. It's, we think, and we're confident it's the best cricket league in the world for women, and the best players from all around the world playing. So I think you can largely put it down to just how watchable it is from a spectacle and an entertainment and quality of cricket perspective. But I think equally, we've been able to get all 59 games of this year's season on television, which is the first time we've had all games on TV. And I think it's been a great start, and we're now in the third year of, standalone competition separate from the men's Big Bash, which I think has created a really unique spot in the Australian sporting calendar in that October, November, off the back of our winter football codes before, often the BBL starts and the men's test season often starts in that December period. So to carve out a dedicated window in October, November, I think was a risk at the time, but it's definitely paying off in terms of that place where everyone's now expecting to see the WBBL.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about that feeling like it was a risk at the time, and different countries are obviously at different stages of their development of promoting the women's game. The UK closest to Australia with their 100 competition. I mean, how risky did you feel it was at that time?
Maybe not so much risky, albeit a bit of a leap, because I think for the first few seasons of the WBBL have been played as double headers with the men's, and that brings with it a bit more certainty around crowds and the scale that you can bring. So to separate the two was very much a calculated risk and a strategic move that had been a long time in the making, and there'd always been an ambition of creating a longer summer of Big Bash, if you like, from the women's through to the men's. And I think the risk or the calculation was always based on cricket's not traditionally in that October, November window in Australia. Are people going to come and be part of it and want to take in cricket at that time? And they have. And then I think what it's done is just continue to create such a strong competition that whether it's people at the grounds or audiences on TV just keep wanting to engage with.
How important has it been to have the Indian players taking part? You've got 8 featuring this year alone.
Oh, phenomenal. I think, firstly, the WBBL has such a rich history of players from all around the world wanting to come and play, whether it's historically a lot of English players and South African players, more recently coming in big numbers. And this year to have the Indian team out playing a national series prior to the WBBL is such a great opportunity, and they just bring another style, another type of cricket. Obviously, there's a big Indian community in Australia that have really engaged as well. So it's been amazing, and I think you have to look at the games so far. They've often been the highest run scorers and been really involved in a lot of their team success. So it's been great.
So where next for the WBBL? I mean, what is the aims, the objectives, given the growth that has already been achieved?
Yeah, I think TV plays a big role. It's fine, as I said earlier, finding a really clear spot in the Australian calendar in October, November. I think we continue to evolve and work really closely with our broadcasters on the creative way we schedule to make sure we can get more games on prime time, more games in the bigger slots, because we think growing that audience is such a big priority for us because of the visibility of the competition. So that's probably still ambition number one, is around that. And I think certainly after the last couple of years of having limited ability to take the competition around to all parts of Australia, we'll be certainly focused on that next year to get WBBL back into Melbourne, which hasn't been able to have any WBBL games the past 2 seasons. So that's a big priority for us, and obviously back into Sydney as well.
Alistair, good luck for the season ahead, both the WBBL and the BBL to come. Great to have you with us on Stumped.
Great to chat. Thanks, Alison.
Alistair Dobson, General Manager of the Big Bash Leagues. Jim, what is your take on the WBBL, first of all, the competition as it's been so far this season?
It's fast evolving into a very good, attractive competition, and it has its own window this year, perhaps more than before, because of COVID and men's cricket being disrupted, not played. So they've grabbed the opportunity. And it really is the women's version of the IPL to a large extent because of the international players that are here. They've made a big difference to the flavour, the quality of the tournament.
Well, the 100 will do its very best to compete on that front next year when it would hope to have a broader width of international players, i.e. more of the Australians involved. Charu, with the 8 Indian players that are in the WBBL, has there been any particular standout performances that you've enjoyed?
The WBBL is if nobody minds this comparison, the IPL for women. And they have this massive lead as well. However, Harmanpreet's done well. Smriti Mandana's done well. Jamima, a young friend who we had on Stumped earlier, has also finally done well. I'm happy for her. So at least 5 out of the 8 have done reasonably well. There's a campaign here in India on the network, the WBBL is being shown, which really showcases the Indian players as well. So there's a lot of attention now, deservedly so, for the women who've gone to Australia. And it does, I think, it's going to, as it did for the first 2 or 3 went, just completely change, exponentially increase the confidence that these girls have playing in international matches. So that's a huge plus.
Could this help them go all the way?
Well, we desperately hope so, don't we? Of course, they've gone almost all the way in the 50-over World Cup and, of course, in the T20, as you mentioned. But it's just that lack of quality fast bowling, I think, that's holding India back from the big titles.
Well, that's all for this week's Stumped here on All India Radio. Don't forget that you can follow us on Twitter. We're at BBCWS Sport. Make sure you use the hashtag BBC Stumped. For now, I'll say thanks to Charu Sharma and Jim Maxwell. And, of course, to you all for listening. And we'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.